Welcome to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese, a program that can help you become liberated in the modern world. Now, here's your host, Dr. Kevin W. Reese.
Okay, we're back for another episode, and I have Priscilla with me here from the Healing and Harmony Center in Glastonbury, a very interesting place, to say the least. And Priscilla, you've had this business for how long now?
So I initially have been in this field for 15 years, and it's been 10 years of me actually having a physical space.
Okay. This is a very big place. You've been doing this for a while. You got traffic coming in and out of people looking for inner peace. They're looking for to enhance their mediumship. They're looking for your help. You have a big small business that is a lot of overhead.
Yeah.
And so I just wanna understand from you what it's like to maintain your inner peace with something like this that could easily disrupt some of these peace.
Absolutely.
This is a lot.
Yeah. So back when I first started in a facility having overhead, I was in a 250 square foot space. So it was like a 14 by 18 little, similar to the room we're in right now. My whole business was in this space.
Yeah.
So I had retail in one corner, my office in another, and then I had these couches and this space all in one space. And I had a 2-year lease, and at about a year, I was overflowing in the space, and I didn't have enough room for the things I wanted to do. And so I was like, I just have another year. I just have another year. So when I went to, get to the end of my lease, I was like, what do I need? And I heard for myself, go bigger than you think you need. And I thought, well, 800 square feet would be about bigger than what I think I need.
Right.
And somehow I ended up in 1,500 square feet in my second facility. And I thought, I don't need 1,500 square feet. So my understanding was my first space was for me. And anytime I tried to bring somebody else into that space to be a presenter, it just never worked out. It never ran.
Was it stressful?
It wasn't stressful. It was just like, why isn't this happening? It was just more annoying.
Right.
And so when I got into the 1,500 square feet, I had no clue how I was going to pay the bills. I literally thought, I'm in Glastonbury. I've tripled, quadrupled my rent. Like, I have no clue why I'm here, but I absolutely knew that I needed to be in that space. And so my first day of walking in, I basically walked in the door. It was an empty facility. I walked in, I looked up, and I said, okay, here's the deal. I'm just going to show up every day. You're going to make sure everything else gets taken care of. And so I basically handed it off to my spirit team, and that's been my motto ever since. I show up, and they will bring me the people who need to come. That 1,500 square feet eventually went within 3 months to 1,800 to then 2,100 square feet over a 6-year period. And then that lease was up, and this space came open, and we're in 4,200 square feet. And again, I say, what do I need 4,200 square feet for in my space? And I was like, because it's going to grow. And so I have everything that I want and I need here. Yes, every, summer comes and I say, oh, where are the people? Where are the people? But somehow, again, I go back to that habit of saying, I'm going to show up.
Right.
So I show up.
And you get a lot of people who love this place, and they come back, and they come back, and then you got your regulars.
Yeah, we have we have people who participate on a regular basis. One of the comments that many people say is, you have too many things going on here. I have to decide where I'm going to spend my money, because do I want a session? Do I want a class? Or there's too many classes.
So how do you stay stress-free here? You just pass it off to the spirit team?
Again, most of what I do is I recognize that what my role is in this world, that it's to be interacting with these people, that people who need a foundation or a fundamental of their spirituality or kind of a recognizing of it, then that's my job, is to kind of bring that to them.
So it's kind of like you feel like this is your purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, the universe, spirit's going to look out for you and make sure that you're taken care of because you're taking care of others.
Yeah.
With 4,200
100
square feet. It's a monster.
Yeah. You know, it's the people who need to be here will be here. The people who come and leave, they were meant to be here for whatever length of time.
I just think that, you know, you're a role model to other entrepreneurs in the holistic community.
Well, that's nice to say.
Because
Thank you.
it's a lot. If anybody doesn't understand what 4,200 square feet looks like,
It's a half of a building.
yeah.
It's a half of a warehouse, basically, is what it is.
Like the room that we're talking in right now, which is a beautiful room with crystals and chairs and little Buddha statues. I mean, this room alone is what someone would pay for an office somewhere.
Absolutely.
You
Each
know?
of the rooms could be an independent office. And even just designing it, it's really, you know, the colors have run through every single center that I've had. So the colors come right over, which is interesting. We moved in here a little over 2 years ago, and people are like, oh, I love this color. I'm like, it's the same color that the other space was. They were like, really? I'm like, yeah, pretty much. So, you know, it's like what people recognize. It's more of the feeling. Most people will walk in the front door and go, oh, it feels so good in here.
It does.
And they will just literally sit on the couches in the lobby and just feel like, oh, I can just sit here. Can I just sit here for like any time? If the door's open, come in and have a seat.
Right.
You know, that's basically the policy. You know, just if you want to come in, just sit.
Yeah.
Because just being in the energy of it, once you walk in, the vibration's pretty high. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And so a lot of folks listening to this may not understand what mediumship is. Some might be a little freaked out by it. But when did you realize that you yourself had this, let's call it a gift, if you will?
So I look at this gift, I look at it more as a natural state of all of us.
Sure.
We all are mediums. We all have a connection to spirit. It's those gut feelings that we have. So for me, it was never, I'm going to be a medium. It's for me, it literally fell upon me. And just a quick story of me walking through my 20s, I was in the fitness industry, and I used to say, I'm not going to make it past 40. And I never knew what that meant. I thought maybe I'm going to die at 40. I don't know what that is. But I had this very clear knowing that I was not going to make it past 40. And so when I turned 40, I was like, I'm still alive. This is a good thing. I've got a year. Let's see what happens. Shortly after my birthday, my dad's health started to go downhill. And from there, you know, within a few months, my dad had passed away. And during that whole time of his major illness, I knew everything. I knew universal laws. I knew things that were coming to me. The last thing I ever said to my dad was, there's a whole bunch of people in this room, and I don't know who they are, but I know that you have more work to do on this earth than this broken down body on earth can't do it. So you got to leave this broken down body, go to the other side, and you'll be able to do the work that you really have to do. And that was it. And he got goosebumps all over his body. His eyes opened wide. He got tears down his cheek. And he just said, wow. And it was kind of like, I don't know. I met God. I don't know what it was, but it was, yeah, I knew exactly what it was. And so from that point on, I just knew stuff. I wasn't one to, you know, let me go seek out a teacher. Just things came to me, experiences came to me, and that was it. So I look at this as it's our innate ability. We all have it. We are all born into it. You know, so many people, and it's kind of a oxymoron being in a spiritual healing, counseling, and education center and what I do. But I say to people, all I do for you is remind you of what you already know.
What you're saying right now is very much in line with a lot of the Eastern philosophies. I'm a Zen guy.
Okay.
So the essence of Zen is really, it's the same thing. It's realizing your original face, as they call it, the face you had before mom and dad met.
Yep.
And all Eastern traditions say that we are everyone has the ability. Nobody's more special than the other one.
Exactly.
The only difference is going to be that maybe this person put in more effort
Yes.
to get there.
More awareness.
More awareness, or they found a
Absolutely.
teacher such as yourself
Mm-hmm.
to guide,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So isn't it interesting that it's sort of the same language? It's sort of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that very intriguing. And one of the things that always intrigued me was, you know, the surface of something like, let's just say, Buddhism. The surface is kind of, it's about peace and it's about meditating and this and that. But then you go deeper and you go into those old sutras,
Mm-hmm.
2,500 years ago, a long time ago. You go into those old sutras and you start reading about the devas, and sometimes they would call them gods with an S.
Absolutely.
And so now fast forward to what you're talking about with spirits and things like this. To me, it's all the same thing. It's just different traditions use different language.
Absolutely. Mediumship, by definition, is the ability it's the knowledge of knowing that the physical body dies and the soul lives on, and we're able to communicate with that soul energy.
Yep.
You know, even in Christianity, we looked at just the prophets could do this, you know, and if you weren't listed or dubbed a prophet, you know, this was blasphemy and you are trying to be a god, and
Right.
you know, and so I mean, I kind of laugh because there's a couple of kinds, you know, again, we label things because that's our human nature, but there's mental mediumship, which is what most people know as, you know, sitting with a sitter, you know, sitting with a reader, and they're connecting you to your loved ones and bringing through messages and guidance. And then there's physical mediumship, which is physical phenomena. You know, I have these tin trumpets sitting here next to me. You know, they would levitate by no touching of me. The energy of the universe would do that. Look at Jesus, water into wine.
Right,
You know,
right.
oh, how did he take the
It's
fish
alchemy,
and the bread,
right?
the loaves, and feed all of these people? How did that all happen?
There's a lot of alchemy involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you say, what happened there? You know?
Yeah.
So,
And it's the same with Gautama the Buddha. He
Yeah.
had incidents.
absolutely.
You know,
Sai Baba, the whole things. You look
they
back.
caught him
and-
walking in the sky.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, Sai Baba would just manifest things and say, oh, go look behind that rock and there's what you need. And you say, okay. So, you know, there's stories throughout every religion. And again, I just say that's exactly what they are. They're stories.
Right.
They're stories. And, you
Parables.
know, humans have taken them and put them into their own perspective, into context, into books, into, you know, rituals and the whole thing. And really, it's just about, like, show up, okay? How about
Right,
that?
right.
So my philosophy of showing up is pretty much what everybody did throughout history. Show up. That's it.
And a lot of people don't show up,
Yeah.
and they walk their lives as, for a lack of a better word, sheep, if you
And
will.
that's okay.
It
you
is
know?
okay.
And that's okay.
You know, sometimes this ignorance is bliss, right?
Yeah.
So,
See, you know, the situation that I see, or we just had a conversation about this last night. It used to be, you know, these are the enlightened ones, and now it's the awakening, and now it's like, now we're woke.
woke, yeah.
That's the word. We're woke.
Yeah.
And I go, you know what? We've always been woke.
Yeah.
We've always been that.
Yeah.
That's just our human nature. But if somebody doesn't want to be awakened to it, then let them be.
Let them
but
be,
the
yeah.
judgment of it is like, oh, they're so unconscious. And it's like,
Right.
no, they're conscious at their level of consciousness. You're conscious at your level of consciousness.
We all have a lot of inner potential.
Mm-hmm.
I just think people are more consumed with their outer potential than they are their
Absolutely.
inner potential.
Absolutely.
So they'd rather have the abs, and they'd rather be physically fit, or you know, get the promotion at their job or
Yeah.
whatever,
Well, it's
instead
our
of
appearance, you know?
Right,
It's the
our
face that we
appearance.
show the world.
That's right, the ego, and not too many people are willing to work with someone like you, or in Zen. Lots of meditation, long strings of silence.
Absolutely.
And
So I look at our physical life, Kevin, as a way of saying, you know, our souls are perfect.
Right.
Our souls are 100% perfect. We are encoded with everything we need coming into this world. All the details, all the information, it's already encoded in our DNA. Being human is our imperfection. Because if we were perfect, we would just breathe and we would have our heartbeat, and that's life, and we'd be fine.
Right.
But because we think and we feel, that's our downside on being human. We think about what we feel, and we feel about what we think, and then we feel about what we feel, and we think about what we think.
And we analyze
and
it.
we just play ping pong all day long, and people go, how do I quiet my mind? I'm like, let them beat your heart and let them breathe your lungs, and you're fine. None of this really matters. This is a story.
Yeah.
And these other people in your life are just the characters you've written in. And so if you want to get frustrated and upset about your interactions with them, like, who's the crazy one, them or you?
In Eastern traditions, it's called the Lila, the play.
Yeah.
So you just described the Lila.
Yeah.
We're in a play.
Absolutely.
We're on the stage.
We're the star of our own show.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't like that character, write them out of your story. They're not in the next chapter,
That's right. That's
you know, but I also see people who get into that woke state, all of a sudden want to be the most judgmental people, and they want to say, I've got to get rid of that person. I've gotten rid of so many friends because I'm so spiritual, I'm so conscious, I'm so awake.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know, you might have gotten rid of some really great people around if you hadn't had a judgment about them.
It's like a spiritual ego type thing. Yeah. Well, I think, the opposite of that would be compassion, and, maybe someone in your life doesn't work for you, but maybe you just put a boundary on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I look at it in a way, or way I describe it to customers is like, draw a circle, put yourself in the middle of that circle. The only people who are allowed inside that circle are the ones who understand that flow of energy, kind of like the infinity symbol. There's a give and a receive. So they're the people who naturally understand that connection that they have with you. You don't even have to see them for years, and you could come back into their energy and you just pick right up where you left off.
Right.
The people outside the circle are the people who really are you're setting the boundaries with. And even if they gave birth to you, they can still be outside the circle. And most people think the circle is a full wall and we can never see anybody on the outside. We never want to spend time with them. The goal is literally make it a half wall, but the goal is literally, how do I spend time with those people I want to kick out of my life and still be okay? And mind my own business and never mind what they're doing.
Right.
Because people show you who they are every single day. Why don't you believe them?
Yeah.
But we have this belief system that mom means you're supposed to love me and you're supposed to be this and you're supposed to be the caretaker. Well, if you didn't have that mom, you are going to be so fed up and frustrated by your mom.
Yeah, I know people that have divorced their parents.
Absolutely. And what's the purpose of that? The goal here and what we're learning as our spiritual beings, I say that in air quotes, but what we're learning here is, how do I be in the crazy and not let it bother me and still be just me? Because I have to recognize that I am me and they are them, and that's who they are. And when I come to an acceptance of they've shown me who they are every single day, why don't I believe them?
Right.
Why do I keep trying to, or have an expectation? And that's really what it comes down to. Why we get so frustrated, why we can't close off our mind, is because we have an expectation of what these labels mean.
Right.
Right? What mom means, what dad means, what family means, what sister means, what a boss means, like what a child means. And when we don't experience that in the world, then we're frustrated over other people's behaviors.
Sure.
Which then makes me live their life for them instead of me living my own life.
Expectations are hurting us.
They are the worst.
And at the end of the day, we're just playing with words here.
Absolutely.
And words are man-made.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say, so I always hold up, like, I have a bottle of water here, but, I always hold it up in class and say, what is this? And people go, what's water? Of course. I'm like, how do you know? And they're like, well, because it's water and because it says it. I'm like, yeah, isn't it nice that they put a label on it for us too? But we can look at even regional differences of things, right? We look at a grinder, a sub, a hoagie, right?
A hero.
That's just a hero. That's just regional.
Yeah.
Like, never mind. I remember being a cheerleader way back in high school and going to a regional event, and a girl from New Hampshire walked up to me and said, "Do you know where the bubbler is?" And I had no clue what she was talking about. It was a water fountain. like that's just regional.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
know, the words we use, that's one of my books that'll come out, is actually the words we use.
Yeah.
Why do we use that word? And when I'm coaching people, I usually say, why did you use that word instead of the 9,000 other words you could have used?
Right.
You use that word to describe something. What does that word mean to you?
Right. Yeah, we're always playing with words. But how do words factor in to prayer or mantras, communication with spirit, things of that nature? How does that work?
Well, we're
in your
telling
opinion?
stories, right?
Yeah.
Everything's a story. Everything's from our perspective. So even if we're doing mediumship, you know, if you think about the experiences that you've had in your life, and imagine every day you had one experience, and we have many more, but imagine every day we had one experience, notable experience, and multiply that by the number of days you've been alive.
Mm-hmm.
All of those experiences are filed in your brain. They are a library of resources. And so what all a medium is really doing is we're opening ourselves up in a quiet space. And the spirit energies will just pull out those resources. You know, if I have a resource of what it feels like to have a heart attack, or if I have a resource of what love is, or I have a resource of the greatest time in my life, they can pull that experience out, and either I feel it or I see it or I hear it as a reminder, say, oh, that symbol or that experience means this for this person. We're putting the pieces together. It's not an exact science, and that's why mediumship gets so tainted, and there's many people out there that are just, you know, doing their thing. But an evidential medium is actually going to be so in tuned with their signs and their symbols from spirit that the messages will come through, and we're just using the words of the story. I'm giving that spirit an opportunity to have a physical body again and talk through me. Not that they're possessing me, but that they actually can be in that human aspect again and communicate with their loved one who's sitting in front of me.
Right.
You know, but it's not an exact science. It's not like they're sitting in front of me and saying, say this, do this, say this. They're just using the references and the resources that I have. They're using my psychic dictionary that I've created over the years that I've done it, and they can use those, and that's why it can be fluid and easy content. But I'm telling their story for them. So words are equally as important from the other side. Emotions, too. It never goes away, even when we cross over. We still have thought. We still have feeling. We still have love. We still have memory. And they're either using their memories in conjunction with my memories.
You're just disembodied.
Yeah. We may be speaking two different languages, but somehow they've got to use my references, my library that's in my head, and be able to pull those resources out.
Well, you just said different languages. So I've always been interested, like, for example, Jesus, right? Obviously a lot of Americans are Christian. It's a Christian country. And they pray to Jesus, but English wasn't invented when Jesus was around.
Absolutely.
So English came, but 200 years later?
Yeah. Yeah. So
how does he know?
Even the Bible written in English language, right? How many translations did that go through? And if you've ever played the game of telephone when you were a kid, where, you know, one person says something in somebody's ear and they whisper it down the line, by the end of the last person, it's a totally different message, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, so languages, it's something I talk about often on this podcast. I know people who say that they're kind of tapped in too. Like, I have this one friend, she's always like, she's sort of halfway joking, but she's like, I have magic. I know magic. Sometimes I see things or I feel things.
Yeah,
I'm like, you need to come to the Healing and Harmony Center in Glastonbury.
We all do, right? That's usually who ends up in my lap, is somebody who needs a fundamental understanding of what's actually happening for them. You know, that, like, I just did a mediumship level 1 class this whole weekend, and, you know, they were in there because they've had experiences and they just can't. I want to use it to help people. If it's going to come for me, if it's coming forward for me now, how do I use it to help people? Yeah,
you have a very niche business.
I do,
and which is good, because word can spread in a more niche-y way.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you were just a regular wellness center, it would be,
Yeah, I mean, we have the Healing and Harmony Center, and that's really for the general market of people coming in who, want a session or private session. And we do everything from massage to healing to readings to, little classes, 2-hour classes, intro kind of things. But, I run a school out of here too called the Psyche Institute for Higher Learning. And that's where people who are ready to go and do this work, they're ready to go out into the world and do it. They will come because they're making a commitment. It's a weekend intensive boot camp. You're here from 9:30 to 6, 2 days. You're exhausted, you're tired, and you're just getting everything. And that's just one level, So,
Right.
so the people who come are usually committed to doing some service work in the world. They're also in a place where things are happening and they want to understand it and how to use it and how to be better.
Again, I see so many parallels with the stuff that I do with Zen, and so many parallels. So if somebody wanted to heighten their ability in Zen, they would go to a monastery.
Absolutely.
Or they would find a Zen master.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So you're in that role of guru.
Somewhat, yeah.
You're a guru.
Yeah, I guess.
We're in the West, so we don't use that word.
Yeah.
And when we do, it's usually like, oh, he's a finance guru, right?
Yeah.
But the real guru in the East is wearing a robe and...
it's all a perception. People always
Nobody
ask
touches
me,
your feet, though?
Yeah. I mean, people always ask me too, like, well, what do you call yourself? And I usually respond with Priscilla.
Yeah.
That's what I call myself because, the things that I do are just tools in my tool belt. They're tools that I bring out. And again, things that I teach students, like, these are just tools in your tool belt. Stop trying to make them all fit together.
So who helped you when you started having this stuff? Or did you just figure it out on your own?
Funny story. So when all of this happened, after my dad passed away, I started noting everything. And, that was a pretty significant loss for me. So there was grief in the middle of all of it. And it was just, I really didn't know where to go. I was still working my full-time job in the fitness industry, running wellness programs. And I did connect to a woman named Karen Noe. She's in New Jersey, and my sister lives there. And my nephew and her son played baseball together. And so my sister ended up at a party at her house, and she had this very zen little garden by her pool. And my sister walked in and said, "Oh, wow, this is such a great place for meditation." And Karen said, "Oh, you don't know what I do you?" And she ran in the house and got a brochure, and she said, I talk to the angels. And so she had a pretty profound experience. She's now a Hay House author, and just wrote a book called We Consciousness. She actually channeled Wayne Dyer and travels with his daughters. So my sister brought it out one day, and she said, well, we should go. She's got a class coming up. And I said, sure. And so I went to her class, and again, what did I remember? It's the things I remembered. And there were drills, and during the meditation, we get to the chakra clearing meditation, and we get to the third eye. And this huge giant eye actually literally appeared in my head. And I thought, what is that blinking at me? That was wild. And so I was like, oh, I guess that would be my woke time. And so then she had us do a drill. And, my sister was in the front of the room and I was in the back. And she said, just tell people what you're getting and just sit with them. And I had a group of 3. And I just started spitting stuff out for this one girl and all these connections and telling the story. And then this guy, and I was like just spitting stuff out. And they were both just sitting there looking at me like with their mouth hanging open. And so the drill was over, and she said, so what'd you experience? And my partner just raised her hand. She said, she got this, she got that, she was this, she was that. My sister's up in front looking back at me like, you got that? What? So, because your family always sees you as how they want to see you. So, from that point, like I connected with Karen. I did my Reiki training with her. I didn't do mediumship training, but I knew that I needed to go to this Doreen Virtue Angel Therapy class, and it was in California, and I was hemming and hawing, and I didn't want to put the expense out, but for some reason I needed to go. So long story short, somebody else ended up paying for it. It was just bizarre, the most bizarre story of how I got there. But I realized that I wasn't there to actually learn from Doreen because I already knew all of that stuff. I really didn't, I can say I went there, but I didn't really learn a whole lot. But I had to meet somebody there. And so it was somebody that I never would have met because she's in Colorado. And so, Spirit works in mysterious ways of getting me to where I need to be at the exact time that person needed to hear my message, my delivery of that to her. And we just became very good friends through the whole thing. So that was about it,
Kind of like a mentor.
Yeah, after that period, I was just kind of on my own, and I just found just tools that I needed. But I actually had asked my team in Spirit, I said, what's the story? How come everybody else gets a teacher? When do I actually get a teacher? And I seem to be the teacher for everybody else, and I don't even know where I learned it. So, when do I get to have the mentor and the teacher? And it was... the message was, nope, just us. That's it. We don't want the human bias. So even when people say to me, oh, did you read this book or did you read that book? I say, no, I don't read books. And I know that sounds maybe uneducated or that sounds like illiterate for people, but I don't read books because I don't want somebody else's opinion about spirituality. I don't want to know what their experiences were. And so I often say to people, when you are reading those books, taken into account, that's their experience, that's their references, and they're telling you their story or what they've received from their level of where they are.
Right.
It does not mean that it is true for you. So even when I teach a class, the first thing I will say, don't believe a word I say. And even today, don't believe a word I say.
Yeah.
Because we all have a human bias. That's that thinking and feeling side to us. We have our perspective.
Yeah.
But that's how we learn and we grow. We don't believe the same things we believed when we were 10.
I'm reminded of Alan Watts, who, I'd say popularity-wise, he was up there in the 70s maybe? Whatever it was. Anyway, he used to open up his lectures by saying, I'm not a spiritual guru, I'm an entertainer.
Well, even with the mediumship,
that got him off the hook right away.
Yeah, but even with the mediumship aspect from a business perspective, we're considered entertainers. My insurance is entertainment insurance. I cannot, liability, so I cannot get spiritual unless I was a minister and ordained and all of that. That's different.
Right,
but
right.
I'm just Priscilla. I'm just me.
You're not attached.
I have a human bias.
You're not attached to a religion.
Absolutely. There's a human bias that comes from all of us. So really discern for yourself what pieces of those books, those podcasts, anything you're listening to, YouTube, any of that, that's somebody else's perspective. What's your perspective and what's your takeaway from it? What piece do you get from it? So,
right.
I'm often sent to places and people say, what are you doing here? Why are you in the same class as me? I'm a beginner. And I'm like, because I just want to see, or I'm sent here because there's something I'm going to learn. There's one piece or that maybe, I can do the same thing that's missing. I can take what I bring to it and recreate it in a better way.
Right.
So that's kind of my educational thing. But usually, I laugh because I wake up in the morning and I just know what needs to be done.
Right.
It's not crazy ideas. It's like, nope, like the agenda was given to me the night before in my sleep. And I go, that's got to get done next. So
how do you handle failure? Because as an entrepreneur, it happens all the time.
So that's one of those words that I say, the words we choose. Why would we call something a failure? What does that mean for each person? To me, there is no failure. That doesn't even exist.
Right.
Good, bad, right, wrong. None of those exist. They're just words of contrast. So failure most often is against success as the opposition. Right.
Right.
The
Duality.
contrast word.
Yeah.
So
how would you handle a bump in the road?
A bump in the road is, and really I say this for anything, we have challenges in our life, and it's the part to us that the only thing we ever have to say to ourselves in those moments is, what am I learning about myself from this experience? And that's it.
Right.
Because that's the only reason that those things are occurring. Yes, people can say, yes, somebody else's free will led it to this or that. I'm like, yes, but that experience is now marked in your soul's path. So it's part of your learning process. It's part of your evolution. What is it that you're learning from that experience?
Right.
So
Right.
that's it. It's not a success or a failure. That's our own definition.
Right.
Right? Everything's on a continuum. Where's the floating in the middle? Right? We got failure on one side and success on the other. We're going to be floating in the middle, and that's the safest place. It's the path of least resistance.
Right.
When I say something's a failure, my thinking and feeling self is going to just keep beating myself up about it and holding myself in that energy of it, and I'm
Right.
living the past.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
The event occurred. What's my accountability to
Right.
it? What did I create around it? And what am I learning from it?
If we stay in the present moment, then it's all irrelevant to anyway.
Absolutely. And most of us, like we will label it. Again, why did we choose that word? But we label it because it's an emotion for us.
Right.
It's a feeling. There was some expectation that I had, and I didn't meet that expectation.
Right.
But in business, I mean, I can't control the number of customers that walk through my door because that's their free will. If they choose not to come,
Right.
that's their free will. I can do my best to put my face forward and be present. That's why I say I just show up, because the people who need to come here, the people who need to hear my ministry message
Yeah.
will be here.
One of the biggest lessons I ever learned from my mentor, my spiritual mentor, was he said, just don't attach yourself to results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just do.
What's the outcome? I say it in maybe different terms. I say, don't get married to the outcome.
Yeah.
We have an expectation of what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, what it's going to be there. And I'm not dashing people's dreams by saying that. I want you to do. If I were working with somebody in a coaching model, I would say to them, what's it going to feel like when you get there? What's it going to look like? What's the desire of it? Great. Have that, hold on to that so that you can manifest it and put your energy toward it. But don't be surprised if it changes.
Right.
Don't be surprised if it becomes something different.
That's the story of my career.
Yeah.
Everything becomes
Yeah.
something different.
I mean, I have, if you had asked me 20 years ago, are you going to be a medium and a spiritual healer, and people are going to come to you and you're going to have a big facility and you're going to run a business, I would be like, I would have been perfectly happy just staying in the fitness industry, training, running businesses, doing what consulting, speaking, I don't care. But it's not where I thought I would be, but here I am,
Right.
and the chapters will keep unfolding. And that's probably more the perspective that I have is, can we let our life unfold, or are we trying to control the outcomes?
Right. Last episode, I spoke with, I did a whole episode with Paul and Susie.
Okay.
And so your name came up a bunch.
Oh.
So it was like,
Okay.
so I was just telling the listeners, like, oh, next episode, we're going to have Priscilla. We're going to
Okay.
have Priscilla.
Great.
So they're an example of of a couple who's, always coming here,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. How often do you see couples? It's pretty rare, right?
It actually isn't as rare as you would think it is. So, in the past, primarily my market, and still primarily my market, is females. The males that come are either connected to the females, or they're on their own spiritual path. And again, they need to hear what I'm saying. They need to hear my ministry message. So when I get the couples, a lot of times they'll enter in different places. They may come, and so for their experience, they basically showed up at a home message circle because somebody had said, oh, you should go see Priscilla, and they sat there. And I just challenged Paul to say, okay, what are you getting? He goes, I'll try it. I'm getting this. I'm like, all right. And he delivered the most beautiful message to somebody that was meaningful. So,
Yeah.
It surprises him. That's why I said it was just about reminding him. So, and sometimes it's the men that just take the lead and then the women come along. But a lot of times it's the women, and they might bring a spouse or a partner to maybe a meditation that I'm doing. I do like a New Year's Day meditation every year, and I have 2 sessions of it. So that I see a lot of couples in that, because it's non-threatening. You don't have to have all the voodoo,
Right.
We're not going to bring through dead people or anything like that.
Right.
So, that's usually how it comes. A lot of times the men will come because the women will say, you really need to hear from your loved one. So come to this event, or come to this, reading event, or have a private session. But more and more, it's surprising me a little bit, but more and more I'm getting a lot of men that are coming through.
Okay.
Men are a little bit more harder to convince sometimes. They're going to have a little stubbornness about, prove to me that you're really bringing my mom through,
Yeah.
And I have a client who had come, And the first time she had came, maybe a year and a half ago, she came and I kept giving her this message, and she said, "This is for him. This is for my husband. This is." And I said, "Why isn't he here? He was supposed to come." He's sitting out in the car. He would not walk in the door. But every message that I was delivering was for him. So this year they came in, and he did come in, and he was just like, okay, but it was kind of a prove it kind of thing. And so, when I got to him, I was just delivering these messages, and it was evidential. And that's the difference. Like, even with mediumship, there's a lot of people that are going to tell you that your mom in spirit loves you. But what mom in spirit doesn't love you,
right.
But it's the evidential pieces when I can bring pieces through that. How would I know? I can't Google a feeling. I can't Google an experience that you had with your mom that she's giving me. And so, he ends up crying, and he's in here, and he's just like, oh my God, that's really my mom. Like it just blew his mind,
How do you deal with people being emotional and crying all the time?
I let it. It's a release. It's the thing that they've been holding on to that's keeping them so stuck.
Right.
We're so stuck as humans. That's the, my tagline is helping spiritual beings get unstuck in their human experience. My whole job is helping people navigate this whole world. How do we navigate being human?
Right.
Right. And so cry, scream, yell. I had a client one time, his mom was coming through, and they had a tumultuous relationship, and he stood up, and he was bright red, and he was screaming, and he was yelling, and he was irate, and it was like, there's this 10-year-old boy coming out of this 60-year-old man. 50 years that's sitting there.
Catharsis.
It's okay. And then he apologized profusely. I said, oh, you don't have to apologize. And I just sat. I don't own any of that. That is when the real work has actually occurred. When we can have a release. It's unbelievable how much we hold on to, because we're told that's not for him. That's not manly, that's not what we do. We don't show emotion. Why not?
Right.
We're thinking and feeling beings. Why are we afraid to show emotion?
Speaking of emotion, let's talk about dying.
Okay, let's talk about dying.
It's a topic that comes up a lot on this podcast. I don't think you can know inner peace unless you understand dying.
Do we ever die?
Well,
so here's the basis of mediumship again.
We're back to the language thing too.
Yeah. Do we ever die? If I get a name, if I get the name Kevin during a session, I have to ask, is Kevin living in spirit or is Kevin living on earth? I have to have a sign or a symbol for that, because they could be mentioning Kevin and you could be here on earth and somebody's trying to connect to Kevin. But if I ask, is Kevin dead or alive, I will always get the answer, Kevin is alive, even if he's living in spirit.
Right.
Because they're not dead.
Right.
They don't see themselves as
just
dead.
Lost their body.
They don't have the physical form anymore. That's right. The dead part of them.
And that's something that comes up on this podcast also, and that I always want to reiterate, is in order to understand all of this, everything, every episode, everything you're talking about now, we have to understand the concept between form and formless.
Yeah.
Form and formless. The oxygen is formless. This table is a form, right?
Absolutely.
So when we die, we're transitioning from form to formless, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You recently had a death, right? Your mother passed?
My mom passed a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you handle it?
So even before, my mom had dementia. And so for probably about 4 years was the most significant part of it. And, I'd say to students, too, we're still human. There's a reason we've come into this house of a body. And I said, doesn't really matter how spiritual I am and how much I understand. She's still my mother in the human form. She still has a connection to me no matter what. And I will still grieve her loss, even though I know she's perfectly fine. And so that had, when she passed, I still had to understand, I am human. It's okay to cry. It's okay to mourn that loss, even though, yes, I know I can connect to her. At the same time, I had a few clients had passed also at the same time. So I literally, for 3 months, I was in funeral mode. And I thought, oh, are you all preparing me for my mom's passing? But I was calm. because I knew that this was the best thing for her. And I knew it was, again, we've got to get out of this rundown body, the body that kind of, it's not going to hold up forever. And coming to the concept that we're all going to die, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's a transition. It's, again, a transition from the human form to a formless energy. We're going back to what we always have been.
Again, Zen, the original.
We're just vibration.
The original phase.
Yeah, we are just a vibration.
Speaking of vibration, what would you say it means when somebody's face just starts vibrating? Like you feel that tingling?
Like you feel it? Like the person's feeling it?
Yeah.
Well, on a physical level, it could be a whole bunch of stuff. we won't get into lymphatic backup and all the nerve stuff. But
like when it comes and goes and...
Yeah, so everybody's going to have signs and symbols of how we're going to actually make connections. So some of us are going to feel things. We're going to use our body as an antenna. Like I look at us, we're like a cell tower.
Right.
That's all we are. We're just receptors of energy. And we need to be grounded in this physical body. And that's a big misconception word, too, that comes out. But, we're going to feel things. We're going to hear things. We're going to see things. And sometimes we just know things. And that's the way that we receive. They're called our four clairs, or CLAIR, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentient, and then claircognizance.
Right.
So we've got to be in tune with what does that mean for you. So if that was happening, my face is vibrating, I'd say, what does that mean for you? Tap into that, find the quiet in that. Right? And just allow that to just be. But we have to be connected to the earth. We have to be plugged in. And the way that I describe that grounding is, the difference between a 2-prong plug and a 3-prong plug, right? The third prong is the grounding plug. And so if you imagine our 2 feet being the plug, the 2-prong plug, and the energy, this prana or this energy tube that runs through us, as it comes down out of the tailbone, it literally falls behind our 2 feet. And that is our grounding plug. It goes deep into Mother Earth, and it allows us the connection for energy to travel between being in the physical world and making those connections in the spirit world.
Sure. Yeah, I've met quite a few people that quote unquote soul travel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we all do. Every night we go to sleep, we're traveling.
Dr. Morse being one of them.
Yeah, we just don't have an awareness of it. So, yeah. And we're all going to have our perspectives of, are we going to meet ascended masters? Are we going to meet light beings? Are we going to meet our loved ones? Are we going to meet angels? Like, it doesn't matter who. That's our labels.
You just brought up an interesting label or term, ascending masters. Now, let's think about religion a little bit. Let's think about Bible. Let's think about Quran. If Abraham saw, what was the name? Gabriel. Okay.
Gabriel's the messenger angel. Yeah.
Yep. And so Abraham met Gabriel. This essentially started Judaism, right? For the most part. It all came from Abraham. Fast forward a lot of centuries. Muhammad was in a cave, and who did he meet? Gabriel.
Yeah.
And that's how he transcribed that into the Quran.
And in the Bible, unto you a child is born, who told Mary, we're going to have a baby.
Right. So
Gabriel's doing a lot of work.
And this is the concept of the ascending masters, and and there's a whole bunch too, isn't there? So Germain?
So the ascended masters are basically, so Mark and Elizabeth Clare Prophet did a lot of work on the ascended masters, and they're probably the authority out there of, their books and things like that.
Of the modern era.
On ascended masters. There's a lot of things in the Theosophical Society. There's a lot of people doing research on that. But I look at the ascended masters, or the way that I would use the connection to that. As humans, we are always seeking something else. Many of us are, what's my life purpose? That's the number one question we get asked as medium. What's my life purpose? It's got to be something better than working in that cubicle at that insurance company. There's got to be. Please tell me there's something better than this.
Yeah.
Right? That, because we're just not happy with our existence there, right?
Right.
And so we're looking for this big life purpose, but our misconception is we think of life purpose as a job. We think it's that ultimate job of what we're here to do. And, we're going to make this big exclamation mark in the world. We're going to leave our legacy. And many of us can do that. And we think it's this big, huge thing. It really isn't. And the Ascended Masters will give us clues. They're really qualities and characteristics that each of the Ascended Masters represents. And, if we work with Ascended Masters, it's the things that we are here to learn from them and implement into our life, and then simply then bring out into the world for others to experience. So for me, one of the Ascended Masters that works very closely with me is Lady Master Nada. And Lady Master Nada actually replaced Jesus on this rainbow ray. But Lady Master Nada is all about service and ministry. So here's my service and welcome to my ministry, Kevin, because this is, everything that in my entire life has been about service. I started out as a gymnastics coach, and then I taught aerobics, and then I was in the fitness industry as a trainer and running businesses and owning it as a consultant. And, now this is a business of service. So like everything in my life has always been about service. It doesn't matter. I can fulfill that same service. I can give all this up and walk away and go be the greeter at Walmart. And I'm still fulfilling that life purpose. I'm still fulfilling my service ministry. That's what I'm there. I may have a message, aisle 17. It doesn't really matter. I'm helping people in a way. It doesn't have to be on a grand scale. So again, walking away from all of this wouldn't be like devastating. People would be like, oh my God, how does that happen? It's like, doesn't matter, because I'm going to be placed in another position of service.
Yeah.
Where I will help people in any way that I can.
I identify with that.
Do you see that? So
I can walk away as well.
Yeah.
I've walked away many times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, we the big three, we have the Ascended Masters and now the world leaders, but the school, the Psyche Institute, is really based on this thing called the threefold flame, and it's El Mourier, and then Joao Kuhl, and now I'm completely lost as I'm trying to bring this, but I'll get it in a minute. But the idea of it, these are like the key. It's God's power, God's love, and God's wisdom within our life. And, those are lessons we are here to learn. And God, we can air quote again, whatever that God is. It's that innate ability that we have the wisdom, we have love, we have this power, we have all of these things. But as humans, we don't have an awareness of it. Nobody gave us a handbook when our soul came into the physical body to say, here you go. Here's all the stuff that's coming up in your life. Good luck. Right? We were literally like, soul comes into physical body, and then, oh, good luck with that. I hope those two people we gave you called parents are going to do a good job with you. We'll see you when you die,
we only get 80 years, give or take. And, what do you think's more important? Becoming rich and famous, or just rich in general and being a success at your job and making a lot of money, or finding your true self and being able to tap into, we'll call it the universal energy. What's going to be more fulfilling than that?
No loved one from the other side has ever come through in my career of doing this to say, I wish I had worked more. Not one of them. They will come through with, I wish I had spent more time with my family. I wish I had told you I loved you more. I wish I had traveled more.
Right.
That's what they wish.
Yeah.
We're here to learn about ourselves.
Right.
That's it.
It's like we're living in a mystery school. And
which isn't really a mystery, though.
It's a attainable mystery.
The experiences that we have might be mysterious to us because we don't understand them.
Right. It's like we're clouded.
Yeah.
And the analogy that I used in my seminar was that, the sun is the quote unquote enlightenment, and it's like we're living in this glass house, and the glass is just dirty. It's just dirty with anger. It's dirty with fear and
feeling and thinking.
Yeah, we just have to clean it.
Yeah.
We just have to clean it and let the sun shine in so our flowers can bloom.
Yeah.
And but it might be mysterious to a lot of people. I want to touch on this before we end. How do you, because you're in such a controversial industry, we'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you deal with the people that are critical? Obviously, because they don't understand. I mean, some Christians can be really, even if they're not mean, they'll give you a backhanded, like, I'll pray for you. One of those type things.
Oh, I lived in Tennessee. I lived in the Bible Belt for about 5 years of my life. And I look back at that time and I say, that was the most curious time of my life, because I wonder why I was placed there. And I absolutely know why I was placed there, because I couldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I didn't have that fundamental experience.
Right.
Because it is the Bible Belt.
Right.
And it is you're going to hell. And it is the,
Yeah.
How you dress is a direct respect of your relationship with God. And it's
Right.
like, if I wear pants versus a dress, that's going to be
Right.
a big impact. I'm going to hell for that. If I'm
Right.
dancing and I'm, it's just, it's so to the extreme in many cases.
Yeah.
And, I grew up Catholic. I was exposed, my dad was Lutheran, so I was exposed to a few things, but, going down to Tennessee, and I lived in like the middle of Tennessee, and like the Catholic Church is buried, the Lutheran Church is like buried in the back, and these huge churches are right on Main Street. So, that religious side to it, like, great, everybody needs to believe in something. I'm glad you believe in something.
Right.
I don't care what it is that you believe in, because that's your belief, and I would never take that away from anybody if that feels right for you. But I get a lot of people that come in here a lot of times and almost feel guilty because they're Catholic, and they go, I'm Catholic, and how should I be here? And I just say, there's here's a ton of mentions of mediumship in the Bible, but what they find over time is this just enhances what they're already doing in those religions.
I was going to say, in the Catholic religion, there's all these saints.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Aren't they originally from the Roman?
Yeah.
The Roman.
Yeah. So
paganism.
Yeah. Like we look at the fundamentals. And again, how many times do we ever question what we believe? Why do we believe what we believe? And usually it's because somebody has told us or taught us that's what we believe. This is what our family believes. This is what tradition is. This is what culture is.
We can be convinced very easily.
Absolutely. And so if we really sit down, most cases, if somebody's really stuck, it's usually based on a belief system that they have, that they so believe it's true, but they've never questioned why they actually believe it. And when we can do that, we will actually get to the bottom of all of this. We will actually see us in a clearer light to say, we're not becoming our parents. We are just living the life that they only knew to teach us. And so I say to all my, the parents that come in here, when your child turns 18, sit them down, and the best gift that you could give them is to say to them, listen, you had to be in this house legally until you were 18. All the crap that we went through, that was my soul's path. You had to be a part of it, but you get the opportunity now being an adult. If I taught you some things that are great, if I taught you some morals and values and ethics that are still working in your life, great, take those and build your life around them. But everything else, that's my stuff. That was my stuff.
My bad.
That was mine.
Yeah.
An example of this is, how many generations away from the Depression era are you?
Right.
Right? So why do you do the things that you do? There's a joke that I tell, there's a mother and daughter in the kitchen, and the mom's making a roast, and she cuts off the ends of the roast and puts it in the pan. The daughter says, Mom, why do you do that? And she said, oh, because your grandmother did that.
Right.
So she goes to her grandmother and she says, Grandma, Mom was making a roast the other night. She cut the ends off the roast, and, I was wondering why she did. She said that you did it. Does it make it more moist? Does it cook better? And Grandma says, No, I didn't have a pan big enough, and so I always end up cutting the ends off the roast so I can fit it into the pan.
Right.
So, how stupid is that we keep this as a tradition in our family
Right.
that we do that? It's like, but we never question why we actually do that. And
Right.
once we start questioning, so, can you live your life with a curious mind instead of a mind of judgment?
Right.
When we look at contrast, on one end we have judgment, the other side is curious. Instead of saying, why is this happening? Can you just say, I wonder what I'm learning. I wonder why this is happening. I wonder what I'm going to get out of this.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So.
Yeah, I had a Christian woman who told me many years ago, "Oh, I loved your book, but as soon as you mentioned mystic, I had to close it."
Close it. Yep.
And I was like, "Whoa,
Yeah,
okay."
and that's okay. I mean, I get letters all the time from people that send me like, you're going to burn in hell, and you're doing the devil's work and all of that.
Right.
And people ask me, do you believe in heaven and hell? And I say, yeah, it's right here on earth.
Right.
I don't have to go anywhere. It's not a location I have to
No.
go. It's the way we're living. It's the contrast of what does heaven mean to you and what does hell mean to you.
Well, sure. It isn't. And I believe Jesus talked about it in the Sermon on the Mount. He described hell. It wasn't fiery, and
Yeah.
it was just anger and fear,
Yeah,
essentially.
and we live like that now. Look at the state of the world.
Right.
Look where we are right now.
Hell, if I'm not mistaken, hell is a slang word, ancient slang word for being overly angry and
Yeah.
in fear.
So again, letting our emotions get the best of us. Letting our
Exactly.
thinking, my thinking says this is what I believe, everybody else should believe it. Even if you look at how the religions got formed, or even in Christianity, you can look at the number of different sects of Christianity that we have, right? And why is that? Because this church has the tenets that they have, and then eventually somebody is going to get this little uprising that says, yeah, that doesn't fit into my life anymore. So, I'm going to go start my own church, and we're going to have all those tenets except those, and we're going to add some others.
Right. Right.
That's how it gets started.
That's how it gets started. Sure. Yeah. And people misunderstand the Bible quite a bit.
Again, it's people's opinions, right?
And, the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus dropped, a lot of good knowledge in there. And it's just over so many people's head. I mean, you could find a Christian and say, well, what did Jesus teach you in the Sermon on the Mount? They might not even know what the Sermon on the Mount is. And they go to church every Sunday. So I think, but things are changing.
Yes. So
Things are changing. The numbers are going
Yeah.
down. And so I think more people are awakening. There's that word again.
Mhm.
More people are awakening to, I'll call it general spirituality, a general spirituality of it's some people are into law of attraction. Some people are just, you hear more and more people talking about, oh yeah, I think the universe is trying to teach me a lesson.
Right.
It's like more and more you're hearing the word God kind of slip out.
So we're always going to meet people where they're at. So that's the key, and that's just general coaching knowledge anyway. We're meeting somebody where they're at. If you don't want to accept what I'm teaching you, that's okay. I can meet you where you're at. There's plenty of other things that I can introduce you to that aren't so woo-woo, right? That you can accept and say, okay, that I can go there for, right? And they'll be like, even at the center, it's like, well, you can't be, you don't want to come into a mediumship class. Great. What do you want to explore? You want to start with meditation? You want to have a massage? You want to just be introduced to energy healing?
And you got the Tibetan bowls.
Yeah. Like, what do you want? We've got singing bowls. We've got, like, it's really, where are you at? What are you ready to receive?
Yeah, and just
Yeah, hold a crystal, right? Hold a stone.
you got crystals, and even across the room you have a Jesus crucifix right there. I can see it from right here. So
I do. I have rosary beads. I actually have a
I
crucifix. I have a Ganesh over there. So
I think
Sai Baba.
I think that's one of the issues, is that the hardcore Christians don't understand that Jesus is very respected in all cultures. The difference is they're all in on Jesus, and the other cultures who are spiritual are saying, well, there's a lot of masters.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of gurus. There's a lot of mystics
Exactly.
and people who
What are
can
you
bring
ready
you.
for? But the thing is, Kevin, what are they all teaching? They're all
Right.
teaching love,
Right.
right? They're not teaching, like, Jesus isn't teaching Christianity because that didn't exist,
Right.
right? They're all just teaching love.
Yeah.
How do we actually be 100% of ourselves so that we can shine that out into the world like a beacon?
Right.
And the people who need to come into that experience and hear my ministry message will come.
Right.
You know, and every single one of us has a ministry message. Here's a way to maybe for your listeners to look at life a little bit. Like, what if your only purpose for being here is to deliver one message to one person? That's it. Your whole entire experience of being here is going to come down to you will serve your life purpose when you deliver one message to one person. The only catch is we're not going to tell you what the message is, and we're not going to tell you who the person is. Would you live your life differently? Would you live your life in a way saying, maybe this is the person? Maybe this is the message. Maybe you already did it when you were 20. Maybe you're not going to do it till your deathbed. But would you live your life differently if that was your knowing of life purpose? Hopefully many people would. They would look at it like, oh, this isn't really important. Or maybe that was the message that I just had to deliver. Maybe a message was a smile or a handshake to somebody to let them know that they're accepted.
An act of kindness.
What do we know, right? What do we know?
Yeah. That's good stuff. So where can people find you? What's the website?
So they can find us at healinginharmonycenter.com, HIH Center on Facebook, and also have the Psyche-Institute is the school if people are interested in that. And I also have a professional Priscilla Bengtson page.
Okay. And I encourage anyone that's in the Hartford area, stop in Healing and Harmony Center in Glastonbury and just say hello. You know, take a look. It's a very peaceful place. And so that's our time. And I want to thank you again for buying me a table. Must have been 5 years ago now. Priscilla brought me a table. Just out of the clear blue. Like, oh, I know. I thought you'd like it. I still use it.
Good.
I still use it to this day. My computer's on it.
Yeah.
I like it because if I'm on the computer, I'd rather stand.
Yeah. And it's
sit.
tall enough that you can do that.
But
right?
then it acts in other ways
capacities,
too.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's great for cutting a video.
And we met because we were both at an outdoor event. We were at the Recreate event.
A festival.
Yeah, in the festival, and you were speaking before I was speaking.
Yeah.
And I said, this guy's talking like I am about this stuff. I think I need to meet him.
Yeah.
And I reached out to you and I said, I think we need to meet.
Yeah. And here we are.
Who is this person?
And here we are.
Yeah.
And I've done a few talks here.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah.
So it's the way things roll.
Absolutely.
All right. So if anyone is looking for more info on me, go to drreese.com. That's doctor spelled out. And I'll talk to you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese. If this episode opened your heart, feel free to share on social media and tell your loved ones. Also, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, may peace be with you.